substance of our biological body, as we think of it, our bio-bodysuit, that, as a conscious being that is actually immortal, inhabiting a biological experience, a biological set of tools. We create tools like a microscope or a telescope to extend the tools that we're gifted with in biological life, and how fascinating that so much coherent research beginning to happen on near-death experiences, and how we perceive with a sense of vision and other senses. There's evidence, but especially vision. A very high percentage of people in cardiac arrest or after 30 seconds, the brain is flatline, and something like 20%, I think it is, come back. Those who survive, their hearts started, 5 minutes later or whatever. They have this 5-minute experience, and they come back, and the most common thing we've all heard is they see their body. They don't identify with it. In the reports I've read, it's like, I saw that body, and I didn't realize till, after recalling this experience, contemplating it, in my body, that was my body, but it was like identifying that as other, not as self. Interesting that when the spirit actually separates spatially from the biological body, which it can do during a seizure, or it can do, like I said, the studies mostly on heart attack. And then some people will see there's a common experience of a tunnel and a light at the end of that tunnel. And then at the end of the tunnel, some have experience beyond that in another realm, and describing colors. Like the blue. There's blue. What we would use the word blue to describe, the closest thing we can imagine to, and it's so far beyond that. Mm-hmm. I suspect that in the spirit body, because we're not limited by the phosphors, the color receptors in the biological eye, but we're in a coherent body that's superconducting, super fluid, shields electrical and magnetic fields because of the two states of matter that I guess potentially three states of matter if it's hydrated, if it's in an environment where there's water, and as the condensate and plasma of electrical energy. So it actually separates then. It seals that membrane, preventing electromagnetic communication with the mother, with the womb, and creates an individual. Separates. Because it's a high current electromagnetic field, it actually programs then the condensate, the spirit minerals within that now one cell, with two sets of genetics that are about to coordinate into, and now you have your first cell. From that first cell, it divides without growing. It's separated. There's actually a hard membrane around it for the first about 5 cell divisions. And so it just separates and separates and separates 3, 4, 5 times, about 32 cells without growing. It's separate. And all the cells are the same. They're spherical. They're just packed in more tightly. They're smaller. And then from there, those cells start to secrete a viscous fluid and start to form an opening on one side. And so there's the first sign of differentiation, first sign of that there's a difference in orientation in space, not just a sphere like how the spirit primarily appears is as a plasma sphere, but it can't when it's outside the body, but it can also holographically project and attract water and minerals from its environment to rebuild the biological physical body in an environment that allows that. So gestation from that early beginning, then we differentiate all the different cell types that we have. So by the time we're born, it's a complete body in terms of tissues and organs and functions, and still maturing and growing and developing, but all the structure is there. And how that the beginning of that is at a first level, to me, the most important for us to understand in looking at growth and development as well as healing, and how we can reverse disease. We have tissue layers. We have an outer layer we're most familiar with. We have the skin. And so that's the cells that were on the outside and stayed on the outside and stayed on the outside and stayed on the outside. And so that layer has a particular function, even from the very beginning, even from a single cell. It has that outside the cell membrane. So our skin, holographically, is our cell membrane. Just like in the macrocosm, the moment of conception as a conscious experiencing being with a membrane, with a definition, with clarity of self, not self.
Would you say that the soul fits in there at a certain stage once awareness?
It's absolutely there at that first instant, because it has the soul. Every cell, every living cell has these spirit minerals in it. They're in the environment. They're in the air. They're in our body. So how the biology interacts with them through electromagnetism and through photonics, through light, is part of the fascinating story that's unfolding for me as I try to define this model, make it explicit, look at the research, say, well, what do we know? What are the unanswered questions? How can those unanswered questions fit in with the others over here, whether it's from subatomic physics? Today I was looking at the proton and the internal structure and what we know, the little we know, but the fascinating story of what we know in there. It's they call it a sea of quarks. There's sea quarks, and they're virtual pairs. They're really not things at all. They're clearly not things. They're virtual particles. A particle is a thing in terms of an idea, and virtual means it's not real. Like you look in a mirror, is there really a body in there at the other side of the mirror? Well, no, it's a virtual image in optics. So does it really look like something's really happening? Oh yeah, that story's happening with light. That's energy. That's what's this sea of protons, a sea of quarks within the proton. When they smash that proton, and don't try this at home. You want to live your life without ever smashing one of your protons if you can help it. But if you do smash a proton, the guts of that angel are mostly energy, mostly electromagnetic energy, ripples in the sea of isness, the sea of that matter floats in. This what's called the 0-point energy, or the vacuum. Well, a vacuum. Our idea of a vacuum is that there's nothing there, but in this case, when we measure it, it has. We can't tell. We can't measure whether it's virtually infinite or infinite energy that creates space. It's a huge, huge number. We have the Planck energy, the Planck size, the Planck time as a dimensional unit of space, time, and energy. That's the smallest that we can conceptualize in our physics. It's the quantum sea of space, time, and energy and matter, because matter we know is energy. Einstein figured that out. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times, what's the speed of light squared doing in there? What's that stuff? What would c squared be? There's some very interesting models in the current models in physics that might actually tell us that story, or where we can bring that in. If you look at the holographic model that says, we experience this as 3 dimensions, and it's absolutely mathematically possible that these 3 dimensions really exist as a projection of a 2-dimensional surface. Well, that's a mirror. Mm-hmm. And mirrors are about symmetry, and everything we can see about creation is symmetry. and an asymmetry. There's a different kind of symmetry.
Mhm.
You know, we're bilaterally symmetrical beings. So we have a unique plane, a left-right plane. In terms of the function of the spirit, that's the primary orientation of that is expression on the right and reception on the left. It's a rotation, it's a vortex. Everything is. From the Big Bang, where you can see,
Like the spiral energy.
yeah, the first thing you see, you look at the polarization in the cosmic microwave background radiation, CMBR, and you see some amazing things. For example, in the first 5 generations of resonance that you see large. The first thing you see is, well, there's two halves around us. There's 2 things around us. Oh, we can see 2 cells. It's a cellular structure. Everything we can see is 1 cell, but that 1 cell is divided visually into 2 by the microwave background resonance. That 2 cells is divided into 4 and into 8. And there's 6 as well, because it's not exclusive. There's a 6 resonance. But all the way up to, you can see them in the data up to, I think it's around, no, it's up to about 4, I would say. It's either 4 or 5, and looking at when the physicists look at the cosmos, there's, what was the term? They call it it's something like the coherence. They're basically the coherence domains, and I forget what the term is, but that they're using. But it's a perfect term. It's like that's what I would call it. So it's like a coherence domain in the heavens, in the cosmos, that gives uniformity. It's the same in all directions, where there's no differentiation like those first 5 generations of our cells in our body. And it's, the numbers they're saying are 4 to 5 generations. It's there's a range of numbers, but it's in exactly the same range where the universe differentiates on the outside and how it differentiates on the inside in terms of life. And at a subatomic level, there's actually 5 different types of presence that are currently in the standard view. And there's many different models, and I'm proposing one that's a bit of a synthetic model that
And by standard view, you mean?
The currently accepted academic view, the view that you can put in print,
Okay.
in the
That's
professional
proven.
journals. That's accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing's ever proven, but a theory is not something we can prove, but we can accept it. We can find evidence for it or against it.
Mm-hmm.
And the best is to have multiple models, multiple views. Look at what are the different things that people propose about that. Like in quantum dynamics, there's like 5 different schools of thought. And so I read through them, and there's one that just absolutely fits my thinking, my model. And they're like different hand tools. Oh, I like the Japanese saw. that works for me, right? So what are models for? They're maps of a territory to help us navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a map is helpful, then it's a good map. And the map is never the terrain. And different maps will show different things. If you look at a photograph of the galaxy that we live in, and apparently not where we came from, there's a fascinating story on how a brown dwarf galaxy went through the Milky Way somewhere in the last couple billion years. And that the astronomers have figured out that they've mapped out the star track of these brown dwarf stars that are in excess in this neighboring galaxy, and so we track where it went through our galaxy, right where we are, and right where we are now. We travel 240 million years around the galaxy to get back to that same spot. It's saying that we are at a moment of resonance with our extragalactic source. Our previous home was, as a material, the material. So the material, remember, the material has its memory. It's all about it's location, location, location. You know, the proton should be a realtor. You know, it is. It's got this real estate pinned down. It's heavy. It knows where it is. It's actually hard to move. It has mass. It has inertia. It likes to keep doing what it's doing. It's a community that's very stable. When it's perturbed, it creates new particles to keep itself from coming apart.
Mhm.
Fascinating. It's like you can picture the nucleus of the atom as it's made of protons and neutrons at the first order. Okay, they're like little marbles, but these are iron marbles. They're heavy. They have real heft, their presence, right? And some of them, the protons are actually magnets. The neutrons are iron marbles. And so, what are they going to do? They're going to form a nice tight community that can bounce around the world and not fall apart unless you throw it really hard, like in a large hadron collider. You know, you build a thing 5 miles long and with a bunch of magnets, and you can speed that thing up to where you break the magnets. Yeah, sure. And then you look at the pieces of magnet and you say, oh, okay. There's these pieces that are magnetic, and there's these pieces that are ferromagnetic, but not with a uniform orientation in space. They remember their history. If we heat that magnet, maybe it'll forget that. We'll give it a new history. We're changing the energy that it's containing in its spatial orientation, its relationship from one atom to another, and its energy fields. It's so matter has a certain kind of memory, and on that layer of the protons, we next look at the electrons, and they're like marbles. They're like colored marbles, you know, usually glass marbles that are out here. But they're tiny little glass marbles that are like way out there. Really, you know, when we measure it, it's like, oh, that nucleus is just this one little magnet, right? From the electron's view, oh, that's the magnet. Yeah, we're playing out here. I know where I am. I know where he is. You know, and I'm going to just play out in the fields of the Lord and change color, like exchange color with other marbles and stuff like that. That's light. The light is the color that plays on those marbles, and the nucleus is the magnet that's like the sun. Okay, the sun is like a nucleus of the solar system, and the Earth is like an electron of that solar system. And in fact, the Earth is negatively charged, and the sun is positively charged. It shoots out its electrons into the orbitals, keeps them out in the orbitals. In fact, the Voyager spacecraft just went through the heliopause, the edge of the sun's cell, its atom of electrons. It was like a cell in the body. We have the nucleus, and we have the cell. And every cell, at every layer, up and down in cosmology and physics,